Students, in this video, I'm going to go over how to do this forestry, what's killing the lodgepole pines assignment. So I recommend that you first start with going over the directions, watching this video, and taking the time to do that so that you understand the mountain range and the trees that we're looking at, because these are real transects from the Uinta Mountain Range in Utah, and it explains the lodgepole pines and how they're dying in the area. A lot of times when people go hiking through an area, they'll see a certain amount of tree death. They don't know if it is normal or not. So that will explain some of this reasoning in the background. Additionally, there's some links to different guides that I've created that help to explain what is an evidence of predation, that the trees have been preyed upon, or that there's evidence of wildfires, that potentially fires are affecting the health of the tree, or drought, or different pathogens. So those are different guides that you can look up that I have made Google Docs. I'm just scrolling it through a few of those so that you can see examples of that. And um, then I have the video explaining it. So once you get to the questions, you will have a forestry transect. So scientists take different transects, um, meaning they will take um, across a straight line, across like a forest or the bottom of the ocean or across a beach, to look at various factors. Maybe they want to do counts of a certain species, or they want to see how often they see instances of garbage in an area or whatever. They can take different tools and do what's called make a quadrat, where they lay down here in using photography, they just took a photo of the space and then they divided it into little boxes, and they're going to count how many times in this instance that they see dead or dying trees. But scientists can do this and say, okay, we're going to see how many of the boxes have a certain kind of clam in them, or have a living coral, or have a dead coral, or something like that. And it just gives you a way to do a count in a certain space to give you various data that you need. And this is a real field technique that's done all the time by field researchers. So in this case, these are actual forest transects from the Uinta Mountains on a tree called lodgepole pines. And lodgepole pines in a healthy area should have 100% tree cover, where you can see nothing but green trees. And obviously you can see that in this aerial photo, there's a lot of squares that have spaces where you can see things other than green trees, like dead trees, or you can see bare ground, or something that looks brown, potentially like a dying tree, etc. So this transect is really easy for you in that it is divided up into 100 squares. So if you have to find what percentage of area has dead trees in it, you're just going to count each square that you see the dead trees. And in this case, in this assignment, you're looking for at least 50% of dead or dying trees. That would include bare ground. So if you see a square that has about 50% of dead or dying trees, then you're going to count that square. And it gives you some examples of what more than 50% looks like. And some of these, it's obvious to see that it's more than 50%. But when I look at like this one, it's more confusing. And this is why they counted it in this instance. And some researchers would count this and some not. But in the example you were given, you are being told to count it. Because it looks shadowy, I'm not sure if this is bare ground or if this is a living tree. However, since my example says to count it, I'm going to count it so that all of the data looks the same. So I'm going to go and count each square where there's at least 50% of dead or dying space. And here I see in this first square, about more than 50% is dark or dead or dying or bare ground. So I'm going to count this one. For me, I'm not going to count this second one, and I'm not going to count this third one. This fourth one, if I'm supposed to count shadowy space, then this might be 50%. So right now I have 1, 2 squares. Then I'm going to count this as my third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. That's how I would count it. So you're going to go and count every single square that has at least 50% dead or dying trees. Because this is divided up by 100 and each square equals 1% in that case, if I find 28 squares, then I'm going to say it has 28% dead or dying trees as my answer. And you're going to put that into the boxes. You're going to do that for these different transects, and then you're going to scroll further down. So if anything over, for instance, 6% is bad. So if 6% or 3% is the normal amount of dead or dying trees, these transects are well over the 3 to 6% threshold of dead or dying trees. So we're going to look deeper now into why that could be. And so in these transects, they actually took pictures of trees up close, and they took one individual tree and photographed it all over the place so they can see what is killing a tree in that transect. And so in this instance, we're going to look closer at this tree and see if we see evidence of different things. So in this tree, do we see evidence of, here in this, evidence of predation? If you're going to see evidence of predation, you might see little holes in the tree like this where different things are burrowing. You might see what's called bark beetle galleries, or holes where bark beetles have burrowed in to lay their eggs that hatch inside. You might see moths or caterpillars. You might also see that some different parasites are growing, or like, in this case, like mistletoe or a foreign plant is growing on the tree. You might see evidence of predation in discolored needles, so like some brown needles. So I'm going to go back to the tree. Those are all various forms of like evidences of predation. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on all of these evidences. Do I see holes in the bark? So each of these samples has a few different things you can click on. And I am seeing some beetle galleries. I'm seeing some holes in the bark. I do not see moths. I see some brown needles here. Let me go back to the other slides. And I see some other plants growing on top that this is obviously not pine needles. So I would write, I am seeing holes in the bark, like right here. I'm seeing a few different holes in the bark. So I would say evidence of predation. I'm seeing holes in bark. I'm seeing the bark beetle galleries. That means these like pathways. I did not see evidence of predation, caterpillars and moths. I did see foreign plants. I did see discolored needles. Okay, now evidence of pathogens. I'm going to go to the evidence of pathogens. That's the wildfire. I'm sorry. So evidence of pathogens. Okay, this is what it looks like. To have this like leaching, like fungus, blue, gray stain inside, or a swelling on the trunk, and discolored needles. Those are all evidences of pathogens. So I'm going to go back. Do I see bluish gray color on the trunk inside? And I do not like it was in these pictures. So I am not going to mark that one. I did not see the swelling on the branches, but again, an evidence of pathogen was the discolored needles. And we did see that in the first slides, these brown needles. We did see that. Okay, evidence of wildfire. Do we see charred bark, fire scars, discolored needles, or charred bark and fire scars was the evidence of wildfire. So let me find that guide. Okay, evidence of wildfires is to have these dark lines inside or charred bark on the outside. So let's go back to this. I don't necessarily see charred bark, and I don't really see distinct fire scars inside. So I'm going to skip those. Evidence of drought could be discolored needles. So this is the third time that I have marked discolored needles, because discolored needles could be due to predators, it could be due to pathogens, or it could be due to drought. So it's being marked 3 times here. And then evidence of drought would be smaller rings. And if you need a picture to help you, there is a guide for that for the smaller rings, but you probably know what smaller rings look like on the trunk. So I do see some very tight rings on the outside, meaning there has been some smaller rings on the outside. So that's how I'm going to mark this one, which is showing that there's a lot of things that are not healthy about this tree that these photos were taken of. You are going to go down and do that same thing and diagnose these different trees. Remember, there's multiple slides for each tree. This one looks like it only has 2 slides, but you are going to do that for these different trees to diagnose and see what is wrong with them, and then you will submit the assignment.